Hey guys, what's up? I'm CJ and welcome back to my galaxy. Today we have another collab. This is for a Hunger Games video this time, and it is with Anesu from Bubblesue, the channel. It's going to be linked in my description below or also linked somewhere up here, something like that. So we're debunking Hunger Games theories, the two of us. We had a long conversation, very long. I have like an hour and 40 minutes of footage to edit that I'm going to edit after filming this, but you're going to see a shorter version of that. And it's just, we came up with our own insane theory for the end of the video. It's to do with the Avoxes and the Mutts. So make sure you stick around for that theory. And you probably saw it in the thumbnail as well, because I think it's a crazy theory. Now this collab meant that I'm also on Anesu's channel. We are talking about, I don't know what she's going to call the video just yet, gentrification. We're talking about that, the City of God, and the movie. And I think she was originally gonna call it the romanticization of the hood, but it's gonna be linked somewhere and in the description below as well. So you guys should definitely go and check her channel out, subscribe, and all of that jazz. She kind of does like video essays, so those sort of videos, and they're really interesting. She's super smart. You should definitely go and check her out. But without further ado, let's get into the video.
Hi, my name is Bubblesue. I have I'm relatively quite new on my YouTube channel, sort of where I sort of like, they're not like academic observations, but stuff that I just take an interest with, with sort of what's happening in real life. And then I sort of try with like, what sort of like any medium of art, whether it's like a movie or a song, and I try to like see the parallels and like compare it. And even my most recent video, the misuse of AI, was you definitely inspired it, with, your Hunger Game videos, which are great, by the way. Other than that, really, it's just sort of an outlet for me to sort of like discuss, again, like I said before, like my observations and stuff.
Let's get started with the debunking theories today. This is quite a popular series on my channel. I've done a couple videos on it, and we've put together 4 theories. And one of them, the one that I've put last, we've like kind of came up with together, kind of like theorized on it. We haven't heard it before, but we'll start with the first one. Theory 1, Gale died at the end of Mockingjay. That's why his character essentially disappears. And when I first showed you this theory, it was, we kind of had different ideas of how we saw this theory. So I wanted to hear yours first.
When you sent me the list, I think that was the first theory that I saw. And just like, as well, for me, out of like the entire trilogy, Mockingjay is like my favorite, like hands down, just because it really goes in basically like behind the scenes and like the politics. Because in the first 2 books, at the end of the day, it's children getting sent into an arena to like kill one another. That's obvious, but then me personally, I always wanted to understand like who could come up with something like that, and if so, why. And Mockingjay, it doesn't really go into like who came up with it. I think like that's definitely in the prequel, but you sort of see like the 2 sides as to how the rebels sort of how they sort of justify their side, whereas like the Capitol, they justify doing their side. So with Gale, obviously he isn't in the games, and in Catching Fire and Hunger Games, you kind of do understand that, Gale is definitely someone that wants to protect his family and his friends. And obviously, when District 12 is bombed, he's like one of the people to try to rescue most of the citizens out. And when it comes to like the weapons that the rebels use, Gale, throughout, in like the first 2 parts of the book, you sort of see Gale sort of transform into like a patriarch. I think that's the right word, right?
In Mockingjay, yeah. I think like a patriarch, more like, he becomes like a pick-me, I would describe.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's sort of this way of trying to prove to himself. And of course, there's the trauma from like, you know, experiencing what happened in 2012 just recently, but also like there's a need to sort of prove to himself that he can participate in the war and like, you know, sort of help the rebels come out on top.
Yeah.
So throughout the events of Mockingjay, we end up, especially we see him and BT collaborating a lot, and sometimes even when Katniss is discussing like her day, she'll be like, oh, okay, girls off with BT probably in the weapons area or something, making weapons. So in part 3, when I think it's part 3, when they're in District 2 and they're planning about how to bomb the Nut, which is sort of where you know most of the District 2 citizens work. Katniss is sort of against it, but then she's quite taken aback that Gale is so like up for it, because this is sort of the first time where her and Gale are really in a situation. I mean, there was District 8, of course, where the hospital bombing had happened.
Yeah.
But District 2 is sort of where we see Gale's real morals and not his identity, but how he approaches the situation. Because Katniss is saying like, no, there's innocent people in there, no matter how like, no matter maybe like the opposing view towards like the capital and like the other districts, there are innocent people in the Nut. We probably shouldn't bomb the entire thing down, because the initial plan was not to have like any like rescue routes, and like you see Gale being quite persistent on it, and his excuses being all like, you know, well, we weren't given the chance to escape either, which I remember reading for the first time and being like, oh, okay, that's a bit, before it was like pick me, but now whoa, like
scary.
this is a bit,
it's like it's like by any means necessary is his mindset, that if innocent people die, then they have to die for the greater cause.
And I think he says something like that as well. I think he says something along the lines like, well, if it means we're gonna win the war. And it's like, yeah, but mate, take it down a bit. So the Nut bombing ends up happening anyway. Fortunately, I mean, I say fortunately lightly, they do end up choosing to pick out like the evacuation tunnels, and then we see the events transpire there. And then towards the end of Mockingjay, and towards the end of part 3, Katniss's sister Prim, she dies from what we think is the capital bombings, but then we end up realizing that no, it was actually the rebels that had did the bombs. And as the reader and Katniss, this is why I sort of like, this is like the moments that I like when I'm reading the book, is when the reader and Katniss are both realizing like, oh shit, wait, if that means the rebels did the bombs, then who was working on the weapons? BT and so you put 2 and 2 together. And when you had explained when you had explained why people thought of the theory, you had said initially that people thought that maybe Gale had died when the capital had taken, like when they were walking to the Snow's mansion.
Yeah, when it comes to the theory, when I was first researching it, like I have a list for the Debunking Theories series. I have like a list of a bunch of theories I researched initially, and when it explained it, it was on like a Screen Rant website. It explained that, from what I gathered, Gale either died when Finnick died to the lizard mutts, or when he was captured by the capital. When this is like right before Prim died, when they're in this like all chaos. In the movie, it's when a bunch of capital people are going towards the mansion, the president's mansion, and in the books, it's during the time when a bunch of what do you call it? When like the engineered, it becomes kind of like an arena, and then there's a bunch of stuff going off.
Just before the pavement opens and people start falling down.
Yes, in the books like that. So it's like around that time, and Katniss loses both Peter and Gale in this like commotion, and so it's either when the lizard mutts kill Finnick or when he's captured at this point by peacekeepers. It happens like he dies in that kind of area, and it's not until Katniss meets with him after Prim has died that people are saying that it was kind of her imagination for her kind of closure. She is imagining him for closure, and he's not actually there. He died in the commotion, and because she so desperately needed that kind of closure because she'd gone mute after Prim died and it was her hallucinating. And that's kind of what the theory said. But you had like a really interesting theory instead of that I found like really interesting, that you kind of, and I'll let you explain it, but it was like you questioned what happened to the characters after the book.
First of all, the theory that you just mentioned is, I'm not trying to be rude, but not towards you, but the person who said it is literally impossible, because we know that once the war's over and you know Pet becomes like under, I think her name is Paler, she becomes the new president. And he writes a letter to Katniss, including what's happened to everyone, and she talks about how her mum and Gale are both in District 2. And Katniss even mentions that you know, Gale's probably like kissing another girl, so we know Gale is alive. That's like a given, because she mentions Finnick's death, like, oh, you know, Finnick's dead, but you know, we have our son, yada yada, whatever. So the epilogue, which is, you know, the final part of the book, happens like 13 years later. So at the end of Mockingjay, Katniss and Peter, they're still like 17, because like Catching Fire and like Mockingjay in terms of like the time periods, I think when you look at the books, they only happen like maybe like 2 months apart. Whereas like obviously with the films, it makes it like the time illusion makes it seem as if it happened a year apart. So I mean, and also maybe because the actors are much older, but like the books, Katniss and Peter are like 17, 16. So 13 years later, which is the epilogue. So Katniss and Peter are like around 35. So Katniss and Peter, they both have their 2 children. When it says that Gale dies at the end of Mockingjay, Katniss, she talks about how, you know, she's had to like overcome her trauma and stuff, and she's talking to the child. And then what I found interesting is that Katniss and Peter released a book, and we've heard from people, we see like, you know, in our world, I'll say our world, but really just like, you know, real life, we see when we have war veterans that come back from war, like I can maybe speak about like, you know, Afghanistan, or even like World War II, just like the previous wars that have happened. We tend to write biographies, and you hear a lot of them saying that it's sort of like a healing experience to sort of release the trauma instead of like holding it in and like, you know, grappling with it. And throughout the entire trilogy, I mean, we see how Peter and Gale both react to the trauma that they face. So Peter is very like, he's able to sort of like process it, work through it, and even if he does lash out on people, there's some sort of way of how he's able to realize that he definitely needs the help, even if it's not approached in the best way. There's still like a sense of like, I need to work on myself because I want to be able to live my life. And he even says it, that he doesn't want the Capitol to change who he is fundamentally as a person, besides being hijacked, which is basically, you know, what the Capitol tried to do to him. So there's always sort of this like underlying sort of, I don't know what the word is, like power that Peter refuses to give.
I would explain it as that.
And then with Gale, even when Katniss is saying her goodbyes in the first Hunger Games, Gale was automatically like, these tributes, so you just need to look at them as if they're animals. You can win it, you know how to use a bow and arrow. And even in like Mockingjay, again, when we spend more time with him, he's very much like, there's a target and we need to get to it no matter what. And I mean, of course, you can't blame them because they're children. So, you know, there's a way how different people may react to things. But like we mentioned before, Gale has this way of like trying to make himself, to prove himself that he's like sort of worthy of, I don't want to like fall into the love triangle part because I don't really like that about the books as much. But you can say he's trying to prove Katniss, but also to try to prove that, oh, look at me though, I'm my own person, and I can. And after the events of Mockingjay, when we get into the epilogue with the book that Peter and Katniss have released, we all know that like when someone releases a biography, like it sort of was the talk, like with Jeanette McCurdy and her biography that she had released. People were talking about it. So obviously with what Katniss and Peter had done. And we also know that in schools even they're teaching the history about the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
And Katniss and Peter were very pivotal at the end of the Hunger Games and the dictatorship really of Snow, period. So Gale already has some weird animosity towards Peter, even though he can't understand why and he even says it. But I can imagine Gale going to District 2. And we all know that District 2 is, during the Hunger Games, that District 2 was where the main military base was.
Yeah.
And
I think he becomes a soldier, actually. It explicitly states he becomes a soldier in District 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, he becomes sort of like a head general of like the military in Panem. And I sort of, when you look at American culture specifically, there's this sort of like propaganda towards like young white men to become like soldiers for your country and to protect America, like America needs you. And when it came to District 2, and like when you talk about the careers, but District 2 mainly, I always sort of saw Cato as like that sort of same young white male, was like told that you need to fight for your country, you know, this is what you have to do. And then for him, it was like you need to bring District 2 pride when you go to the games and you kill all these like people. And I mean, in the movies, when it comes to Cato's death, leading up to his death, he mentioned, or in the films, he mentions, you know, it wasn't worth anything. I'm dead anyways. Whereas in the books, from Katniss's point of view, you can clearly see that he's cracking.
Yeah, definitely.
Pretty much disheveled at that point. And I feel like when Gale goes to District 2, I still sort of feel like the culture's still sort of there.
It would have to be, yeah.
Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, not necessarily like, oh, we need to put in some people now, but like, oh, we need to continue the strong, like, I don't know what the word is, but like
mentality?
This pride of like, yeah, like still like, oh, we're strong, this and that. And, you know, with Gale coming from the events of Mockingjay, he's get so much praise. We know from the books as well that Gale gets quite a lot of attention from women as well. Yeah. So I can imagine Gale finding the perfect nuclear family with his children and his wife, and him sort of being looked up to. We see a lot of like American generals even who are sort of like given the medals and they're sort of put on a pedestal as well. Like all these people killed such and such in like Iraq or Afghanistan and they've got so many medals. Same with how I probably see Gale's like aftermath with like how he's accomplished so much. But we all really know that he really just wants to settle down in District 12 with Katniss and possibly build a life there.
Yeah.
The only issue is that, like we said before, Gale is just quite shallow-minded.
Close-minded? You know? Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah. He can't really understand all the trauma. He believes that Katniss should be sort of some damsel in distress and like be running up to him.
Oh, yeah. Pick me.
Being like, yeah, exactly, like why aren't you coming up to me sort of way. So I see Gale's life between like the 13 years. He gets married, he has, you know, the nuclear family, and whilst he's getting all the accolades, there's sort of like a downright like a spiral.
Because there's still the hole in his life that Katniss left, that heartbroken mentality. Yeah.
And we see like pathetic men who are like, I mean, we see it like with rappers even like rapping about women that they dated and then just acting immature. And I see Gale sort of going down that path, like the incel path of like, why didn't she love me? Or she's pathetic. Or now she's writing a book, or now she started a family. You know, in like even in the world, there's the morphine drug as well.
Yeah.
And I see Gale possibly leaning towards that. If not morphine, then perhaps alcoholism. But I'm more inclined to go for morphine because we see a lot of American soldiers who come back from war actually become homeless and drug addicts.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of like PTSD they have from what they witnessed.
It's represented in Mockingjay as well when Katniss gets addicted to morphling, when they keep giving it to her and she gets addicted to it.
And I see Gale like it slowly, like, obviously from maybe his injuries, that because we know that he was kidnapped from the capital, and maybe just for a brief point, maybe they did something to him, like maybe just beat him up or like traumatized him, and then obviously the bombs happened and they won. But either way, like, you'll be traumatized from everything that's happened, period. So I see him using it slowly, and then by the time he's maybe like in his 30s, he's probably, just gone in a way. Like, him dying off isn't necessarily like a figment of Katniss's imagination.
Yeah.
But with Katniss and Peter being able to acknowledge the trauma that they went through, and even like, I know I keep repeating myself, but I really feel like Suzanne mentioning that they wrote a book about it.
I don't remember them saying that they wrote a book. I would assume that there's some sort of biography history collection, I guess, they've been put in, I assume. Is it at the end? Because I don't think they mentioned it in the end. If they did write a book, it'd be like an external source.
I think they said that they were putting like some information together. They were going to release a book.
Yeah,
like
that book.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. It's at the end. They're putting together all the tributes in a book.
Yes.
Yeah. No, yeah. I get what you mean. Yeah.
Interesting, because remember, even in Catching Fire, they refused to watch their games when it came to like learning how, because they couldn't face it. But I think it speaks volumes that they're even willing to like do that tribute book of all the innocent kids that had been murdered. Yeah. So when they're both of their paths. Like, you see Peter and Katniss flourishing and they're in the meadow, whereas Gale is diminishing like slowly but surely. And and I think, again, I'm not trying to go too deep into it, but we know the meadow is like buried with all the victims.
It's a mass grave
on the bombing. Yeah. Also, we know Gale and Katniss used to go there.
Yeah.
So I think it's something like she's really like buried like everything underneath, and Gale away is sort of underneath everything.
I think you mentioned as well, and I shouldn't laugh at it because it's really bad, that you think that eventually Gale is like he like kills himself. Not to get like too deep, but he eventually like dies, overdoses, that sort of thing, by accident or on purpose and whatever. And I shouldn't laugh at that, but I mean, Gale, he doesn't deserve it because he was still a kid. But I also wouldn't be surprised if something like that did end up happening. And I don't really agree with the original theory that Katniss made up her goodbye to Gale, because I do think he went to District 2. It was stated by other characters where he went as well. I just don't believe it. I think it's more plausible that Gale ended up in District 2 and there was some sort of biography sort of written and published not by Katniss and Peter or by the people around them. So there is like historical evidence in order to not repeat the war that they had just gone to. So, Haymitch and Peter and Katniss share the tributes and all the tributes that were lost to the games and everyone who was lost to the war with other people. And that's how that record is taken, and Gale sees that. And it just makes them spiral more.
Even like white American culture, there's like this need to I don't know what the word, but like a very toxic like masculinity, like to prove that you're a man.
Yeah.
And I feel like Gale, I mean, both Gale and Katniss both lost their fathers in the mine bombing. Okay. But in the destruction of the mine.
Yeah.
And already he has to take the mantle of being the man of the house. And I mean, I feel like at that point, I mean, the Hunger Games have been going on for like 60 years when their parents both passed. And then by the time, Gale's like 18, Katniss is in the games and stuff. But I just feel like it's that red pill sort of content, what it is and how he becomes. Because, like you said, it's quite unfortunate because there are people who are able to not overcome, but they're able to process what they've gone through. As Gale, that's fortunate to do that. So
I can't imagine Gale fully recovered from the war in the same way Peter and Katniss did, just because Peter and Katniss had each other And then Gale
Yeah.
literally lost everything. I think at the end of the books, he pretty much just has his family. In the movies, they don't show his family, but in the books, we don't know. I don't think we know where his family ends up, but they they survived to District 13, and then they're not mentioned again. And Katniss was quite close with their family, with Gale's family as well. So we don't know where they ended up, but in a way, he's still very alone and heartbroken after Katniss. And I just don't see him fully recovering. And it's just another way Suzanne Collins represents the harshness of war and conflicts like that.
Stereotypically, like Gale and Katniss should have perhaps gotten married, if not like somehow like would have still had a close relationship.
Yeah.
I think also why I don't like Gale is because he could not understand why Katniss had changed as a person.
Yeah.
Because he had his idea of her before the games, and he still thought like, oh, after the games she'll come back to me, and like titled to her in a way. I think it's a good theory, like from what we discussed. But the one, like you said, like Screen Rant and stuff, they don't really hold that much weight. Like,
no, I think there are a lot of theories that the fandom comes up with that are like, did you read the book or did you watch the movies? Did we watch the same movie? I don't think so.
I'm thinking like even if you watch the film, like Annie literally says that Gale has like gone to District 2 with your mother. So I think all right.
It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, completely debunked. No, I don't think the original theory is true, but Gale after the books, maybe. I mean, we have our theories.
And I like our like conclusion for it, but the other one was over it.
Yeah. Theory number 2 is a fandom theory. Cato and Clove were like Peter and Katniss in the way they were star-crossed lovers in the arena. This theory essentially comes from the fandom. When I was a lot younger and very fresh in the fandom, it was a thing that people really shipped Cato and Clove together. And it was my idea that the artificial storm that happens in the cave scene with Katniss and Peter it was there, especially after the rule change, that they were aiming for another couple to maybe, get entertainment out of, and that couple would have been Cato and Clove, and to see them really bond in the arena. I personally, before we even get into like a discussion, I personally have always loved the ship and the headcanon that Cato and Clove were like a thing, or just like really close, knew each other before the games as well.
I've come across the theory maybe like twice, not as much. But sometimes when I would like maybe see a TikTok edit, it would probably just like do a dumbass like meme of like Cato and Clove like in a love scene. But then when we talked about it the other day, I just thought, oh, actually, yeah, that makes sense, because when you look at especially like athletics, like running, like track, or like javelin or something, or just like any sport in general, especially when it comes to the Olympics, countries tend to pick certain individuals to like sort of like prop them up and to like to build hype around them.
Yeah.
So let's say for Australia, for example, I mean the Olympics are happening this year. You tend to see the trend of like countries will like fixate on like one person, and they'll like hype them up to like win the gold medal.
Yeah.
And once they win the gold medal, it's like, oh, see, like we're right. So then when that person doesn't win the gold medal from the same country and somebody else ends up taking it, it was like they were the underdog, and then that gets even more hype. No one was really like, it wasn't that people were expecting it, because these are all like Olympic athletes, like they're the best of the best. But it's the fact that the person that they were pushing up wasn't able to achieve what they were meant to have.
Yeah.
So I see with like Cato and Clove, like people expect career tributes to win the games.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
So the fact that Peter and Katniss were even able to make it to like the final like 4, or like even like top 5, was like a big accomplishment, because it was like, oh, like both people from like the poorest district are like still this far in the games. Like you said, like the storm was actually meant really for them. I think, rather than like Katniss and Peter was like, oh yeah, that's fine. But like I think with Cato and Clove, if it was romantic, then I can see like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I think they mainly just had a really close relationship. And they wanted, because I think, okay, the capital were never going to allow two people from the same district to win.
No. Yeah.
But I think like it was the sort of like, I think they sort of saw the opportunity of like two people in the same district. And I think initially it was the star-crossed lovers and then like the brother and sister.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. And they made that storm for Kato and Clove because they were playing on people's emotions, especially from District 2. Because if it ever came to Kato and Clove as the final two and they did the announcement, then it would have been even more entertaining. I say entertaining lightly because it's not entertaining, it's gross.
Yeah.
But that's sort of what the capital wanted to sort of produce in terms of the games, because we know from like Snow from the prequel that he said in order to keep the games entertained and for people to keep tuning in, we have to make it like a spectacle or something like that.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, with Kato and Clove, I feel like I definitely believe that the storm was probably meant for them more. You know, when they're back in, I think it's the square where they're sitting down and they're watching like the preview of the games that they were in after they've just won.
Yes.
And Katniss in the yellow dress.
Yes.
Katniss says that they've made the montage almost as if it's like a romantic like movie.
They did the highlights. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that if it came to Kato and Clove, I think that's like the initial format they probably had, expecting either Kato or Clove to win.
Yeah.
With like the best buddies, like sibling, or like, you know, I love you, or look, they're gonna allow us to both win. Or wait, no, they can't, only one person go, and then the final fight happens.
That reminded me of you remember on YouTube in the early days of YouTube, how there's like a Haymitch Games YouTube video, and then there was a fan-made YouTube video that I remember watching. It was in the depths of YouTube that I saw. I watched this. It was fan-made, and it was like a women's only Hunger Games, and then these two friends went into the games, and it was a fight to the death, and one of them like double-crossed the other, and then they tried to kill them, and then only one of them ended up being the victor. It was like a fan fiction, but it was a YouTube video that I remember watching, and it just reminds me of that. And it would have been a different highlight reel had Kato and Clove or Kato or Clove won.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it holds weight. I really do. And like I said, with like athletes, like we see certain people that we thought weren't going to win a gold medal, and they end up doing, like, you know, Usain Bolt, his last race in the Olympics, people were like gassing him up, like there was like documentaries and like video. I remember so much press around Usain Bolt.
Oh yeah.
It was the Olympics before the recent one, which was his last one, and they made it a big like, oh, Usain Bolt is going to retire. So everyone's like, oh yeah, he's going to win. Guess what? He lost. He came third, and it was like this huge, like, you know, like, what do you mean it's Usain? Like, how can he not win? So I think it's the same with like kids. And even with the guy who won can you imagine winning an Olympic gold for like one of the most looking forward events in the Olympics? And I don't remember anything on him, like nothing. So
yeah, and it's just like when it comes to the entertainment factor of the Hunger Games, in the same way, I feel like when it comes to Peter and Katniss and Kato and Clove, they gave them like a chance. Both of them, it was like one of these people will win. And when you think of that, it's also of my belief, I've said it on my channel before, is that I believe that Kato and Clove were also like pinned as like these two could be the star-crossed whatever relationship and they could help the rebellion, that they were waiting for someone like Peter and Katniss, Kato and Clove to come along. So they like the people who were a part of the rebellion, Haymitch or whatever, were communicating and saying, hey, we have these two teams here. Let's see which one wins to give us a chance, give us a fighting chance for a rebellion and a face of the rebellion.
So right, because, okay, Plutarch is a game maker. And I really do believe that there was definitely more game makers who were on the rebel. Oh my god, wow. Sorry, I get so excited sometimes.
Gather your thoughts. Yeah.
They think as much as like there were like some really like sadistic game makers who were like, oh, let's make them fight to the death. Some of the game makers on the side were like, if we do this for the career tributes, career, like, and I believe that Kato and Clove were like, because Kato's like 14, so there
Was
must have
he?
been a lot of
I
like
thought Kato was supposed to be same age as Katniss. Clove, yeah.
Clove
She's presented
was
like that
for
in the movies, I believe, 14, 15, sort of. Yeah. I don't know how old she is in the books, but she's young in the movies.
yeah. And but even then, like Haymitch, I think it was either Haymitch or Katniss, but it's like common knowledge, like, you know, careers they train in like an academy, and then once they reach 18, because I guess because you've had that many years of experience, then that's when you need to go into the games. So the fact that Clove and Kato, both who were not 18, were sent into the games makes me believe that District 2, they were like the pinnacle, like they were like the Usain Bolt of District 2.
Yeah.
So the game makers who are on the rebel side, because they've got intel in District 2, they're thinking, because again, they're more going towards the career tributes, because like the careers are obviously much more better fighters. They're thinking, if we make this storm and we allow this rule to go through and break it, District 2 are going to be really pissed. And we all know that, like, even Mockingjay, if they didn't get to District 2, then the rebels weren't able to invade the capital.
Oh, yeah.
So that's my, I actually, I think, Sorry, it's just like when you said that, I was like, wait.
District 2 was their first choice, and unfortunately, Katniss and Peeta was their second choice. Like, damn. Could have been them.
I think that's a good theory. I think that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon that one would be pretty accurate. You know, we don't know for sure, but there is a lot of evidence in the text that Kato and Clove were chosen, and they were the only other team remaining at the end of the games. So I would say they would have to know each other, and they would have been shown a lot towards the end as well.
And I think it goes like with Susan Collins is like this. I'm so happy because it's like the Hunger Games isn't like all the chosen one.
Yeah.
It's just whoever has, I mean, not to sound corny, but like whoever has like the most odds stacked against them in a way.
Yeah.
But even like Kato and Clove, like they had like the less amount of odds and they still didn't win.
Theory 3 is one I've spoken about on my channel before. Tigress was the District 4 stylist, and after what happened to Finnick, she left being a stylist and started working for the rebellion.
I mean, as much as like we can have our own theories, I think you mentioned this one is really like heavily like implied. All of them.
Yeah, I originally saw this theory first. I don't know if they came up with it, so if anyone knows who actually came up with it, leave it in the comments. But I originally saw it on the Super Carlin Brothers YouTube channel, and they were talking about how it happens too many times, like it's implied too many times in the text to have it be an accident. There's too many correlations here. So the whole thing is that Tigress we know that by the end of Mockingjay, Tigress is working for the rebellion and knows, I think her name's Cressida, the filmmaker, Cressida. She knows Tigress, and she owns like a fashion shop in the capital close to the mansion, actually. And she's close with Snow already. Like, geographically, she's close with Snow still. With the prequel, we know that Tigress, unfortunately, very likely had to sell herself in order to keep the Snow family afloat after the war. And she's very against Snow being highly critical of people who did what they had to do in order to survive. And we know as well from Mockingjay, Finnick also was forced into selling his body because he was seen as a desirable victor. So there's a lot of ways that these two characters come up in the narrative. We don't know for sure which district Tigress was the stylist for, but we do know that she was a stylist until, in Mockingjay, she states to Katniss that she was a stylist until Snow found her too ugly to present on TV. When it comes to why she left, we also don't know that for sure. So there's a theory as to like, why did she officially leave? What eventually pulled Snow and Tigress apart from communicating altogether? Because eventually, I assume Snow gave her the stylist opportunity. We know that he implemented stylists for the tributes after the prequel. He says it in like the epilogue of the prequel.
Tigress did say, she said that didn't think she was pretty enough.
Yeah.
And then it makes me think, like, was she still doing stuff to like make favors for Snow?
Yeah. Like, was she working for Snow in the way that was she like working for Snow in the background when he was selling tributes, or do you mean like working with
In terms of blackmail? Because I know Finnick mentioned that, you know, Snow would like other people in the capital would have blackmail on other people as well. So Snow would use her as like arm candy, all of this is my cousin. And then you know, people who are in the higher ups, Snow would force Tigress to sleep with them and then use it as blackmail, like if you don't give me what I need or something, then I'll expose you sleeping with, you know, Tigress or something. But I do think that like probably like her final straw was Finnick being being used as a prostitute. Because she probably thought that it was only happening to her. And maybe because I mean, I know in the movies it implied Tigress like seeing the switch in Snow. But in the books we don't really see that. Like it's not like that, or Tigress can see like the change of Snow. I mean, again, it's from his point of view. But I would imagine that, you know, Tigress again, she's a stylist for one of the career just, which is in that scenario, it's like seen as like quite prestigious in a way. And then, you know, whilst Tigress is doing these favors for Snow, I guess she'll probably like, she's obviously like growing up and she's aging. And then once she can no longer do prostitution, she's probably thinking, okay, that's it, it's over. Like, and I guess because she still has that, I'm thinking from like the books, I'm only getting my information from the books, that she probably just sees Snow as like just plain dirty, like dirty politics. That's besides the games itself, because that's just, you know, that's in terms of like what they're having to do to like, she's probably thinking that Snow's just trying to make sure that we stay afloat. And, you know, family, so we have to help each other. And I'm guessing like their grandma, she's long gone now, like she's dead. So it's really just like the two of them. And, you know, we do know Snow does eventually start a family. So I feel like, I mean, we also know he's like manipulative and like a psychopath. So he's probably like playing on her emotions, like, oh, but what about my grandkids? What about my kids? Like, we need to have enough money, because what if the plinth money runs out? We need to ensure that money coming in all the time. And then once Tigress sort of is no longer deemed like attractive anymore, she probably thinks, okay, I mean, it wasn't, in her mind, she's probably thinking it wasn't prostitution. She's probably like, just, oh, well, I had to help the family. And then while she's styling these careers and stuff, she's probably not thinking anything's happening, because who would? Like, I'm pretty sure that as a collective, when we all read Mockingjay for the first time, and when Finnick had said that he had been forced into prostitution, everyone was shocked. So I'm assuming the same for Tigress, and then like the ultimate betrayal, because she's like, you know that at such a young age I had to do the same thing, and now you're doing it the same to like these children too. What, like you've already got everything that you need. Like you're already the president of the country. And again, I do believe that Tigress probably did have a close relationship with Finnick as well, because I'm probably thinking that even when they go, because I think they end up going to her house right after the Mutt attack, right?
Yeah. So it's Finnick's missing person as well. So she's seeing in the movie, you know how like the billboards are showing his face just after he's died. So she knows that he's a part of this group as well, and he doesn't show up with them.
Like the wanted person, she's like, oh, so if Cressida's saying that she's a part of the group, then she's expecting Finnick to come in. She probably even has hope as well, because, you know, initially everyone thinks that they're dead, but then Tigress is probably aware from like Cressida's like, I don't know if they're communicating as much, because again, it's from Katniss's point of view in the books, and in the movies it's very like, you know, elusive. So perhaps maybe Cressida is like in communication with Tigress in a way of being like, okay, like we're coming up, so she's aware that, you know, if they need help they'll probably come. I don't know, just like sort of. So then again, even when she realizes that Finnick isn't there, I think it's mainly just like out of like grief that she even allows him to come in. I mean, she didn't stop what was happening with Finnick, but I think because like she was so disturbed from it, that's when she left because she's like, okay, yeah, I'm done. It's okay maybe now that I've stopped doing it, but I thought we were doing it for a different cause to ensure that we had power and that the Snow name stayed like afloat in like the top, like as I thought it was for us to like keep our position.
Yeah.
And then of course maybe I get much older and I'm not seen as like appealing anymore. And then she's just like, okay, it's done. And then I'm not too sure. Maybe she had still had connection. Maybe she was still somehow using blackmail in like different ways. So then maybe at one point she was like in some sort of like shady like business dealing, political, well, doing like Snow's like business for him.
Yeah.
And then the mention of like, oh, like, you know, I've got a new play toy now, the boy from this, like something like something missing. And then she's like, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, in prostitution, whoa. And along with that theory, I wouldn't say Tigress is naive, but in my head, I'm like, from the theory, it's sort of just like, I feel like she gives Snow too much grace because they're cousins, and until, you know.
She's optimistic for a while that her baby cousin is still there when it's very apparent by the prequel that he's not. And I think another thing that is connecting Tigress to District 4 specifically as a stylist is that immediately after Mags won the games in the 11th games, after they implemented stylists, and it's likely that Tigress had a lot of influence on that very crazy capital fashion because it started in the 11th games, and then because she was the stylist of Mags, everyone saw it and was like, I want to dress like Mags, the winner. And then they promote Tigress more, so Tigress is in the media a lot. So it has a lot of, with the history of how it eventually evolved into the Hunger Games that we see in the original trilogy, it makes a lot of sense that it originated with Tigress and Mags. So she was already the stylist of District 4 when Finnick came along. So she established that relationship with him as well.
I think it wasn't, I mean, with maybe, okay, so here's two things, is that they either like were like, okay, these are the stylists, or Snow in the next games was like, okay, we just need people to help them wear clothes that they haven't been wearing the same for like 4 days. And as we know, the Plimps are like one of the richest families in the capital. Yeah. So perhaps like my two theories, well, not theories, but my two reasons are either that Snow just asked maybe a couple of friends to help the districts out. Yeah. So, or could you help District 1? Like he got 12 people for the 12 districts. Or it was like the same with the mentorship program, or now we've got stylists. Yeah. And I think it mainly just to like make them look, I mean, later games is like to obviously like make them trend and like get more like sponsorships, but initially I think it was just to make them look presentable, because even from like the 10th games there were people who had rabies. I think it was one of the students, even they said that they don't want to watch the games when they're already like half dead. And we know from even Tigress how she was able to like sort of even like bleach Snow's top when it came to like the graduation or like the achievement of the Pimp Prize or something. So I think it was definitely along the lines where like Tigress just happened to have District 4, and we know the 10th games how she was able to help. I mean, the only reason people didn't really doubt the Snows were like going broke is because she was able to sort of finesse herself. Yeah. In like businesses, like the business that she was working for, she was able to sort of like trick the owner into like washing the clothes. Yeah. And everything. And that's why I think even like afterwards, like she was still doing it, but in a way that she thought she was helping Snow still. Like, this is for the family. So yeah, like with the Mags thing, 100%. I think her reasoning for like working against the capital wasn't necessarily for the district. Yeah. It was mainly just for like, oh, like you betrayed me and now I'm going to take revenge on you. Her mind wasn't like, oh, this is like entirely wrong for like the districts who are being oppressed. Yeah. It was like, oh, well, you came over, so now I'm going to sort of like try to overtake you and like get in a way. Yeah. Maybe.
I mean, I guess she probably saw an opportunity anyway with the, like, she can work in fashion that way, and Snow was still looking out for her. So she thought, you know, may as well work in the games, see how I can leverage myself up that way. And I wouldn't be surprised as well if Snow, she saw the threat that Snow would be in the future. So she remained as an ally to him in a way until Finnick came along.
Here, like up the point, it says Tigress's fashion choices were forced upon her.
Yeah, I saw that.
Thought that much into it. Like, what do you think about it?
Well, in the books specifically, she eats raw meat, which is one thing that really stood out to me, is that she had this very cat-like demeanor about her anyway. She ate the raw meat. She dressed like a cat as well, very feline mannerisms and features. So I think it was her choice specifically to have that fashion choice, but I don't think she wanted to influence people as much as she did. With it, that wasn't her original intention. I think that her boss's name was Fabricia as well, had a bit of a wild style to her. So it wasn't maybe necessarily their original intention to have like really wild capital fashion that like it ended up being. But I think it was influenced by Tigress. So it wasn't necessarily forced on her. But once she created the style and she wasn't desirable anymore, Snow took the style from her instead of forcing it on her. So it was taken from her and she was forgotten about. That her influence on the capital fashion was eventually forgotten.
I think maybe the only thing that Snow probably forced on Tigress was for her to look presentable. So to be thin, like to have unrealistic standards.
Yeah.
I think does still eat meat. Does she eat meat in some Ballad of Snakes and stuff?
Yeah.
Does she eat it?
At the beginning, actually, they mention how Snow mentions how she eats a lot less of the meat that is cooked, and when they sit down for dinner as like a Snow family with the grandmam and Snow, when she sits down to eat with them, she eats less, but he doesn't mind not pointing out to her because she eats meat as she goes, as she cooks. So she'll like pick raw meat out of it and eat little bits of that. It's just like a weird little mannerism that Suzanne Collins added for Tigress to show us that this wasn't forced on her. It's very likely she influenced the capital and it wasn't Snow's original idea.
I think maybe the like eccentric style came from Tigress. It was maybe like an icon essentially, and then completely I mean, do you know Cassie, the singer, that situation that happened with Diddy recently?
I don't think I've heard of that one, but go
well,
on.
It's quite unfortunate. Like, it's sort of the same like power dynamics, except like Diddy and Cassie were dating, and Cassie, do you remember the like shaved half look?
Yeah.
Like half. Cassie was the one that started it, and like we're like, oh, like she's so iconic, and then once she left Diddy like abruptly, everyone was like, oh, okay, like, and then it was only like until she filed a lawsuit against him, and allegedly he did all this stuff towards her, like abused her and stuff. So people were like, oh, okay, like that's probably the reason why she left. But the minute she left, it was almost as if like she was not exist, like she didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I imagine the same happening to Tigress, because Cassie in the lawsuit had mentioned that she thought it was like normal, and then she figured out like something was happening to other people, and then she was like, I have to stand up for what happened towards me.
Yeah.
The same could have happened to Tigress, where like, I mean, yes, she started a lot of fashion trends and stuff, and she had like this weird habit of like eating meat and everything, but once Snow didn't see her as desirable, he ditched her, and then he took, like you said, the fashion stuff and like imposed it on everyone else. So
yeah, I definitely think that this whole theory with Theory 3 is very valid. I think there's so much evidence in the text to suggest that that's what happened, and it's almost, I feel, even though it's implied, I feel like Suzanne Collins definitely explicitly wanted us to know that Tigress, Finnick, and Mags were all connected in some way. Theory 4, Avoxes being turned into mutts. Now, we kind of share this theory. We have like different points that we came up with. I think it's really interesting that I originally told you when we were like planning this video that there was what I think to be early versions of the lizard mutts in Dr. Gall's experiment science building. Snow points out several things, and one of them really stood out to me was there was what he assumed were Avoxes, who were kind of lizard-like scales, and there was some with like feathers and whatnot. And these were like early versions of the Mutts that originally would end up killing Finnick. So I thought, and you suggested as well that maybe the Mutts that we see in the original trilogy were originally Avoxes that they tortured and eventually genetically engineered into a freak show of animals.
Whilst we were discussing the theories, I brought up like, oh, do you remember those Avoxes that had like, and we were just discussing how like, you know, the differences between the Mutts in the books and then the Mutts in the film.
Yes.
It was like then when you had also mentioned like, oh yeah, like they had like scales, like them in the ones in like the prequel, they had scales on them and almost like they were lizards. And then I had mentioned like the elephant trunk on the Avox. And then you had talked about how like even when they would like scream, like they couldn't because their tongues were cut out.
Yeah.
In the books of the Hunger Games, the first book, when it comes to the Mutts, the dogs chasing Katniss, Peter, and Cato, when Katniss takes like a good look at them, she's almost confused because one, they're like literally like humans, and two, because they literally have like the eyes of like the dead tributes. And then I think you had said that the fur
was like their hair. Yeah.
Most of the time, the reason why Katniss was so spooked out was just because of how human-like they were, and she couldn't, like, while she was like trying to digest, like, what are these like things? I feel like again, Suzanne really wants to like push that. I mean, I don't know when she wrote the prequel book, but I'm guessing like, you know, when she was writing like Hunger Games, even she maybe had like the thought in the back of her head. But once we read the prequel, and even like the lizard Mutts as well, Katniss says that they're human size as well. It's just the only difference obviously is that like the multiple arms and like the scales on their body. It's unfortunate because I mean in the films, like Dr. Gol, I think we talked about this as well, like Dr. Gol is almost like whimsical in a way. I mean, it's still a great performance by Viola Davis, but the book Dr. Gol and then the film Dr. Gol are like two different people essentially. You know? Because in the books, like this woman is like not okay. Like she's not alright at all. Like when Clemencia gets bitten by the snake, in the book she gets scales and I think her skin even like goes green, like rainbow color, right? And does she grow fangs or like a tongue or something?
There's something, I don't think she grows anything, but she does, her mannerisms with her tongue change. So she's like, her tongue starts sticking out in the same way like a lizard like feels the air with their tongue. So as she's talking, they're like, her tongue's going crazy. You know, in what I'm imagining her being like, and I'm not a huge fan of the series, but Harry Potter, that one guy with the fake eye goggle thing. And his tongue goes all weird. So that's kind of how I imagine her tongue to be like.
Yeah. I feel like that's really interesting because when it comes to like the Mutts that we see in like later versions of the games and how advanced they are, because I always wondered like how the hell, like there's no way you mutate a dog to have to like how do you like you can't manipulate the DNA to look like that way.
It's easier to just use Avoxes to as a base.
I remember when we like both made that when we were talking about it, and I was like, that makes perfect sense because even with like the lizards, it's just quite haunting because I mean like the books already are very like it's quite a lot to like digest, but like the Mutt for me personally, like I just can't like it's very like because it's just really sadistic.
I think you mentioned also when we were chatting before we filmed this video is that Peter being hijacked and his brain being manipulated. That was one of your points.
You know, with Peter, he in his mind with the hijacking, he mentions that he can tell when it's like a fake scenario or like compared to the real one, but that's only because he has people around him to help rehabilitate. But we know, like, initially, the minute he's his Katniss, he's like, bang. And we know that he was hijacked into believing that Katniss was the enemy because he has, like, viewpoint. So, again, Peter's human and Avox is a human as well. So whilst they mutate Avoxes to look animalistic in a way. They've probably like hijacked them into seeing like the tributes as like the target, you know, and
Yes.
I especially with like the Mutts.
And they refer to Peter as a mutt as well, multiple times. I think you shouted so loud the audio went out for a second that you like completely mute.
Did I?
Yeah, it like went out for a second. Yeah, it's like he's literally referred to as a mutt. So like, how do we know that Peter, like people like Peter, like Avoxes, weren't used as like the base body to build these mutts from, that they can manipulate their minds to act very animalistic, and then they change their attributes. So we can literally see it in Peter and Clemencia, that Clemencia has the physical attributes and her mind is going really wild, and she's starting to act very snake-like as well. And then Peter acts very much like a mutt. So what's stopping the capital from having the mutts that we see literally having been Avoxes?
Did Clemencia say anything when she was like what was happening, or did she like really like just like, because I can't really remember that part of the book too well. I do just remember her like having scales growing and stuff.
She has everything. Hallucinations. I believe Snow starts trying to talk to her, but it gets really weird because she's like saying like they're after me or something, and the capital's being weird. Like she's talking about the capital and conspiracy theories, and Snow's like, whoa, crazy much. And so yeah, and it's like, yeah, Clemencia becomes this paranoid figure as well, and I think a lot of her behavior is very reflective of what we see from Peter in Mockingjay.
When she says like they're after, I think maybe like because Dr. Gore was probably just testing it on Clemencia to see like how it would work, like when she does on the Avoxes. I think that's like the early stages of like hijacking, and yeah, God, the mutt thing with Peter literally is like a dead giveaway. It's such a again, I feel like this one again is something that there's like too much evidence pointing to it. And even with like Snow walking through Dr. Gold's lab, and literally everything turns, it's like bang, bang, bang,
Avox is this and Avox is mutated like that. It's so insane. I literally have never heard anyone talk about the whole idea of Avox as being literally the Mutts. So I don't know if the tributes would have been, I imagine they would need like someone alive. So the tributes that we see the Mutts as in the 74th Hunger Games, I doubt they were the tributes, but I would imagine they could have been Avoxes originally, or prisoners of war, that sort of thing. And the lizard Mutts, especially in the movie, they're portrayed very human-like. And the Mutts in the 74th Hunger Games act like humans, like they have human mannerisms as well.
The monk?
Not the monkeys, not in the 75th one. The wolves, not the monkeys.
Doesn't Katniss say like his mutt is like telling each one what to do and stuff?
Yes. And then they start climbing on each other. So Katniss thinks that they can't get on top of the cornucopia when they're running from them. That's why they're up there. But instead, they end up stacking, like climbing on top of each other, like to get one of them up there, and they keep like jumping up. And it's very human-like mannerism she describes them as, that she can't imagine wolves actually being like that. That's why she starts considering like, what's wrong with these are mutts, these aren't actual wolves, that sort of thing.
I think by then her only exposure to Avoxes are people like, I mean, it's like the Till girl, remember, from the forest? I think was her name.
It wasn't Twill. That was one of the District 8. It was Bonnie and Twill from District 8, and then it was Lavinia, I believe, who was the Avox.
So, yeah, but like before they go into the games, that's when she sees one of the Avoxes, and that's when she's like, "Oh, I know that person."
Yeah.
And then Peter saves her, like, "No, you don't." Actually.
Yeah.
She obviously did, but I think then, because I think even with like common knowledge, like not common knowledge, but like from like our common knowledge from up to that point, we see that maybe the capital treats capital people the best.
Yeah.
And then the district's the worst.
Mm-hmm.
So only justification is like they've used the dead bodies of the tributes.
Yeah.
And then later on throughout the series, we realize that Avox is essentially, also treated terribly.
Mm.
And then there's even like levels within like capital society and stuff. And then especially in Mockingjay, when the entire street just turns into another Hunger Games with like, monsters and stuff being opened. And I think she even talks of like when she said like how high they jump is like unrealistic.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they were humans originally, which is like the whole theory. Like, I just can't imagine how no one has picked up on this. I'm sure someone has said it somewhere on the internet and I just haven't seen it, but I haven't seen anyone mention anything about it. See, this is our theory. We've come up with this. Credit to us.
I was gonna say, because I feel like the way we came up with this theory also was just like in passing conversation as well.
Yeah.
Literally, like I was like, oh, should I just maybe bring this up a bit? Because I was like, we've mainly focused on like the focus on the prequel as well, but I just thought I don't really see that many people speaking about the Mutts. I think maybe just because it's like all like as a collective, we just don't want to think about them because they're just too terrifying.
Yeah.
Even like with the monkeys, in the 75th games, is there anything mentioned about them?
In the movies, they are mentioned, like they're depicted literally as baboons. In Catching Fire, I can't remember specifically, but if anything, they would have been much bigger. And there's always this point that Katniss makes when it's to do with Mutts, is that they don't look like animals she's seen like before. Like they don't act like animals. It's like they have very human-like features to them.
Even like in the 74 games, like it being in the woods, like Katniss is definitely a wolf before. So seeing how the wolf acted would have definitely been like, side eye.
Another thing that it just came to mind, that with Peter being hijacked, and it's like it's directly in front of us as well.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to Peter, and he literally gives the group a warning that there are Mutts approaching, because he starts hissing like, it's not in the movies, he starts hissing in the books like the lizard Mutts. Like that's how they know that they're approaching.
I remember because I was listening to the audiobook.
Yeah.
And I'm much older now, so I'm able to like, also I'm trying to pay attention to like the details. And I'm like, oh, like, why is this guy here? Like Katniss is like, you can see him like hissing and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's hive mind. Oh my god, the tracker jackets.
Because they're literally connected. They were like controlled in the same way, because how else would they be controlled? Is the tracker jacket venom, and it's because they're produced in the same way, that Peter is at one step before being a mutt, like a proper animal mutt.
When you like with the hissing and like I just mentioned like the hive mind, that's maybe why they put them in the wasps, because what is a beehive?
Yeah, they're literally hives.
And then when Katniss, because I mean in the films, Caesar Flickerman he gives a brief explanation that the minute Hacker Jacker is interrupted, then all of them erupt, and then we obviously see with Katniss, she gets stung by one and the other one comes. It's like, I mean, with the wasps, I mean, it's still terrifying, but the wasps are essentially like, the minute they find the target, then they all go, we need to go to this specific target. And it's the same with like, the hissing with Peter is blown.
The one wasp that comes out and says that we have to go to that target is very similar to how there's a leader of the pack in the 74th Hunger Games with the tributes. Mutts.
Yeah.
So there's a leader like the Tracker Jackers. It's right in front of us. I guess we don't see it because we have like Peter's being called a mutt, and we're like, no, our beloved Peter is not a mutt. When he's
it's not. It's just humans. They've literally been altered and like I mean, you see with with Ty Whisperer and how she has like female like features. So it's
oh my god, it's like. There's so many. There are quite literally so many points that Suzanne Collins has given us.
Yeah.
More people should be talking about this.
You see, like, the capital's so heavy on like aesthetics, and then you've got Tigers who literally looks like a cat.
Yeah.
It's literally for me. But I truly believe that with Tigers was a choice. Like with Or, and I think with Peter, he essentially is, I mean, he hasn't been altered, of course, but I just don't think he's been like we said, like the only thing that he had, oh my god, the reason why he was hissing is because those mutts were meant to target Katniss. And when he was
because they have a target. Oh my god. I can imagine that they let Peter go right before the step where they actually make them the real mutts. So he's like, there's like different steps to transitioning them into mutts. Snow literally says like these people look like they want to escape. There's still like people there, Avoxes. These mutts are literal people. They're not animals. They're people with genetic codes changed.
You know, like genetically modified foods, like GM foods, and how like it's probably the same. And I can imagine how excruciating that is and how painful and horrid it is.
Yeah.
Would have made Peter a lizard mutt if they hadn't listened.
Oh, maybe
would have. They were going to. I think no, it wasn't, because there's no reason for him to be hissing like that. No reason, because the mutts were hissing Katniss.
Maybe they were producing these mutts at the same time as they were hijacking Peter. That's why he's used as the leader and as the target. You know, like how you use like GPS trackers and stuff to follow people, that sort of thing. Like they used him as that like tracker. So they've been waiting to release these mutts to be able to find where Katniss is.
Yeah.
Like they didn't plant him there necessarily to kill Katniss. Obviously he mentally tortured her from being like a mutt, but he's there so these mutts could approach Peter in order to attack Katniss when they most needed to find her.
Yeah, like you said, because I think initially, okay, like they were going to transition Peter into becoming a mutt essentially, but then they found out that, you know, the rebels were coming to capture her. So they're probably like, well, we're already down to like the hijacking. The only thing that was left was like the physical transformation. So let's just send Peter there, because why? His only target is Katniss. So they're just hoping that Peter does whatever he has to do in District 13.
Yeah.
That fails in a way, because they're sort of rehabilitating him. And then when they go to the capital, and essentially the mutts couldn't have been really sent to Katniss.
Yeah.
So, because if Peter had stayed in District 13, then it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
But then obviously they have the cameras and they can, and obviously Coin sent Peter.
Yeah.
So
not to make like the theory worse or anything, but say like they don't have enough like prisoners of war and Avoxes, like is there like not to like dehumanize actual people, like human characters, but like was there like a breeding program to be able to produce that many lizard mutts or something? Like I can imagine them like trying to reproduce more mutts that way, because they're like animals at that point.
District 2 and like the need to like be a proud citizen of like the capital and stuff. And you know about Sir James's dad and like this like what's the word, like when you want to like be in proximity with like elitism and stuff.
Yeah.
So I believe that people from this District 2 specifically, because you've got peacekeepers as well. I feel like peacekeepers are the only people that have, during the 75 years, well, I would say maybe 75. No, 75, 75 years of the games are probably the only people who have been able to come out of their district. So maybe there's also like a false, because you know about in America they deploy families to different countries.
Yeah.
It's probably the same in the capital. They're like, oh, come work in the capital and your kids won't have to be in the games. They don't have to be in the what's it called? The ball, I forgot now. The reaping.
Yeah, they don't have to be in the reaping.
Yeah, there's
reaping ball.
Calm our minds or something. And then essentially they get turned, like, I don't know how it would work. Maybe like a parent dies whilst working in really like bad environments of the capital. And then in order to be like, well, if you don't want to go back to District 2 and have your kids enter the reaping ball, then come work for us in the science department. And then somehow it will trickle down to like being manipulated into testing and
Yeah,
stuff.
and they also have peacekeepers who come out of District 2. Most of them don't come from the capital, they come from District 2. And Darius in the books, he's not in the movies, he's just in the books, becomes an AVOX. So a lot of their peacekeepers from District 2 would also be AVOXs eventually if they misbehave.
That theory is so good.
I know.
We literally, look at us.
We're literally geniuses.
It's like, oh gosh, this is such a good like final theory.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's not even a theory. It's there.
It's right in front of us.
There. It's there. And you know the reason why Peter doesn't attack Katniss anymore afterwards is because they shut everything down. So there's nothing to like trigger. The only emotional outburst he has is just maybe from the trauma. That's it.
My God. And that's why he's so like neutral, I guess, like when he goes to District 12 and Katniss hugs him for the first time and he's just like there, like not reacting or anything. It's because he's like lost a part of his mind when they like shut everything down and he's trying to like recuperate that still.
Yeah. And like maybe the only times when he is like screaming is like just like because at the end of the day it's like in his head.
Yeah.
To their memory. So I think the only thing he's remembering is like the false memories that you know isn't real. So I think it's sort of like when like a film is playing.
Yeah.
I think it's like that, and then he can't because right now obviously I'm talking to you and like I've got you in my memory.
Yeah.
So I'm like seeing how it goes. So like with him, perhaps it's just like an old film that is going now, and he knows it's not true because it's been shut down, but it's still wiring. It's just no longer like it's like a button in a way to like press live. You know?
Yeah.
So
that's insane to think about.
Susan Collins really is a phenomenal like author.
Yeah, definitely.
Her way to really like digest. I honestly feel like if I hadn't have read the books when I was 12, my worldview and like my interest in like world politics and just like anything wouldn't have been the same.
Honestly, yeah, same. I read them when I was 9, and honestly, I think most of my personality comes from Katniss herself. I wouldn't be this person you're seeing today if it weren't for the Hunger Games.
I feel other people have this conversation where like the reason why the Hunger Games isn't like the typical like sci-fi is because it is tackling and addressing world issues, but just on different narrative. Whereas like books like Divergent and stuff, like it's just like, oh, I have to pick a different fraction. Oh, but I'm in love.
It's stripping it to its bare bones with Divergent.
I haven't read Divergent. Not going to. Haven't read Twilight. Not going to.
I started reading Divergent and then I got so bored I just put it down. And normally I keep reading books, at least the first one, but I put down Divergent. I was like, screw you. Like, no.
You know, she wrote another book about, it's the same thing with like factions and like, it was like base. I couldn't even finish it because it was like, I don't understand what's going on. But like Suzanne is like, there's a reason why this is happening. And you need to like read in between the lines. Also, I remember watching a TikTok video and this girl has said that people are not wanting to read the books because they want to be told what it is to their face. But read lines. And just what we did with like the final theory, like the evidence is there, like Peter's a mutt, he was hissing, oh look, there are these AVOXs that are being like lizards in a way, you know, and then the hijacking, just all this like evidence there as a puzzle put it together. And we had, in order for us to come up with that, we had to obviously read the book. And I feel like it was things that was standing out. Like you said, there were like bright signs and it's like, oh, it's a bit too much. And then when you read it closely, it's a whole big picture. Yeah.
And I think when it comes to novels that are like Divergent and Twilight, they focus a lot on tropes instead. And when it's the Hunger Games, it's more like themes. And when you look at themes that you add to novels, and like I've studied this at university, when you look at themes, they're very human themes. We study Shakespeare, for example, today because the themes are so human, they're still relevant today.
Even like myself, like I'm a huge like cinema buff, and I've always said that the films that do the best are the ones that can convey real human emotion.
Yes,
It isn't something that's made up that no one can relate to, like Interstellar. If I had to save my family,
Yeah.
I had to go to I'm going to a different planet. If it's something that can literally save my family, I'll do it. Like, it's like anybody would do it in a heartbeat, even if it's like close friends. Yeah, there's science, yeah, there's like, sci-fi and like mathematics and like physics, but the real reason why people are motivated to find a new home planet is because of love.
Yeah, and that's what makes a lot of media, books, films, whatever, it's because they have very human aspects to them, and those are the ones that are most successful because of their emotional draw for people and audiences that we've experienced all of these emotions before, so we get to experience them through different medias. And once you strip it down to tropes, like there's no human element because we don't live tropes like that. We live themes and emotions.
Yeah, like a vampire wants to drink my blood. The hell?
Yeah.
Like, no. And that means you're in love with me? No.
Yeah, I mean, vampire novels would work better if they played off of human emotions and they correlated with human themes. And you have to like start with the humanity in it and then expand from there. That's why the original Dracula novel was so successful, because it drew in themes of that were very prevalent during the time. So they were very afraid of then certain mythologies, and they were afraid of there's one expression of sexuality as a major theme in Dracula, and people were afraid of women expressing their sexuality. So a lot of women female characters in the novel are one character is like freely expressing sexuality and the other isn't, and the one that's expressing freely with their sexuality is the one that's turned into a vampire and eventually killed. And that's like it was very human at that point to discuss themes like that. And that's when you see stuff like the Hunger Games reflecting very human themes, because you've started with humanity and expanded from there.
The entire events from the Reaping from the 74 all the way to Mockingjay, the reason why it's bad is because Katniss was only trying to save Prim.
Yeah, exactly. And
ended up losing her, which was like, it's like you put so much effort into something only for it to, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think, of course, like, she wasn't trying to save the entire Panem, just her little sister.
Yeah.
She did in, like, basically saving generations on generations, future generations. But in her mind, it was only just to stop her sister from being reaped into the games. And it's the same with, like, no one, like, it doesn't matter, like, if you've gotten, like, the biggest gun or whatnot, like war, and it will take anything away from you. Like, it doesn't discriminate. Because even people in the capital, I remember reading Mockingjay even, and I was thinking, why the hell would you open? Like, why would you have traps in like where the capital citizens are living?
At the end of the day, it's like when also the point when you made with Interstellar, like if you were given the option to choose your family, you're going to choose your family. So Katniss chooses Prim, and a lot of us are going to choose our siblings or any family members that are really important to us and loved ones before any of this war and conflict and above all.
Well, thank you for having me on your channel. Honestly,
thanks for being here. Very insightful. I would not have been able to come up with that last Avox theory without you. It's, two great minds coming together.
Vice versa. Because, like, even when you mention like the scale thing, I feel like the reason why we were able to really come up with that theory is because we really take it seriously.
Yeah.
People can, honestly, if you're on this channel, then obviously you have an interest. Even if you're watching this video, you have an interest in the Hunger Games. And it's not just because it's a book and it's just like great writing, but it really is like, why is it there? Why is this happening? I know I keep saying it, but the hissing part that you mentioned really was, that's when everything started clicking.
Yeah, same.
And as much as these characters are not real, I feel like they're in every person, honestly. Like, times when you probably don't want to like remember certain things and want to even like overcome it. Because people would say that, Peter's hijacking does represent PTSD.
Yeah.
But I think PTSD is obviously the memories. And because you're no longer in it, like you're no longer where like you're no longer in the battlefield, but you still have the memories. And I think with the hijacking, because they shut down all the the tribute center in the capital, so he can no longer be triggered, but it's still there with the memories. And I think that's what the PTSD is, rather than him still being hijacked, like actively being hijacked or deactivated, but because he's still like, you remember, like you see something and you remember it.
Yeah.
So it's the same with like Peter's PTSD. He remembers the hijacking that happened, and that's what traumatizes him the most.
Thank you again for being on my channel. Very insightful ideas. You brought a lot of insightful ideas to my channel, and you know, hopefully we can have you on my channel again if you'd like to.
Yeah, definitely have to. That would be fun. Because we had some other theories as well, like the Mags one that we had with like how Katniss.
Yeah,
that one was cool. That one was really
we
cool.
won't spoil it. We'll do another video at some point.
Yeah, 100%. Okay then.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks so much.
Alright guys, that is it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed all of these theories that we debunked today. There was quite a few of them and we had a very lengthy conversation about that. I would love to know all of your thoughts about these theories down below. I love reading really long paragraphs that people put in my comment sections because my subscribers are so very smart. So if you put a paragraph, a very long paragraph, you might even have that paragraph in a future video where I'm like debunking theories. If you have your own theory, you know, let's chat about it in the comment section and maybe I'll make a video about it. Who knows? So if you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. I am trying to get to 1,000 subscribers and I'm going to be talking about everything to do with the Hunger Games in the future. I also do everything like media, books, video games, that sort of thing. I'm also annotating the Hunger Games at the moment and I've got 2 episodes on that. And I've got a bunch of other debunking videos on my channel if you're interested. Once again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, but I've been CJ and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.